So the SAPS then is under pressure to fill thousands of policing positions and reduce the negative impact of government budget cuts on the service. Police Minister Bheki Cele reportedly said this week that the pandemic has disrupted plans to recruit up to 14,000 officers. This was in 2020 and 2021. Let's talk more about the proposed budget cuts and what they may mean for the police service's long-term planning with security analyst Ziyanda Stuurman. Ziyanda, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for being on News at Prime. Put in context the skills available and what is needed.
Right. I think really what the major impact of not being able to recruit new officers, as the police minister has said, is essentially that there's a natural attrition rate within the police service, as in any labour market, where some people in an annual year may resign, may retire, may leave the service, or may die either in the line of duty or through other sort of causes. So you need to have a healthy flow of new recruits coming into the police service to sort of counterbalance those who are leaving the service. The fact that during the pandemic, the police haven't been able to undertake any bulk intake recruitment as they usually would, paired with the fact that there are those who are leaving the service, and then on top of that, budget cuts. We're essentially in a situation where new police officers who are needed in the service, who need to be trained, and particularly those who could go on to do sort of more specialist services such as detective work, public order policing, etc. That sort of cohort or new cohort might not be available in at least the short to medium term. And that's certainly an issue in terms of the mandate of the police.
And Ziyanda, how accurate is the figure of 11,000? We're told these are police officers, we're reading at least, who either retired or resigned during the pandemic. Is that accurate?
So it's not necessarily that it isn't accurate, but it is a projection made on sort of analysis of the current state of the police service, which actually employs about 182,000 police officers, and that's sort of weighed up against the possible budget cuts as the police minister had announced over the next 3 years. So it's not that it's inaccurate. It's just that we need to understand that it's not that 11,000 police officers and 2,000 detectives disappeared overnight from the police service. It's that is a projection and analysis.
And which skills does the South African Police Service need most right now?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer, given the fact that there's, we don't really know the state of much of the sort of HR relations and operations within the SAPS. That would obviously fall, under the ambit of the operational administration of the service under the National Police Commissioner, as well as provincial commissioners and in headquarters. But we can glean, obviously, from sort of recent media reports, for example, that there's been a shortfall of both skills and personnel within the forensic service, for example. And that has led to a really large backlog in the number of samples that have been processed, or at least one factor in terms of that. We also know that there are many police stations across the country that don't have enough detectives who are assigned to those police stations, and that certainly hampers the investigation of crime. So there are, I think, across multiple levels, personnel who are missing or skills that are not there. And unless the situation with recruitment and training is quickly rectified, we could see more of that.
I'm sure you've seen the reporting. It was done by Business Tech, I think 2-3 days ago, on the issue of the 14,000 recruits, which the police minister was saying they were unable to get between 2020 and 2021 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But that article also goes on to say that about 4 billion rand of the policing budget for the year through March last year was unspent. So where is the disconnect? You've got this critical need for skill, yet you've got money that is not being spent.
Yeah, I think that it's very complicated and multi-layered, and absolutely the pandemic has had an effect on how the police are able to train officers. Again, given that there are a number of training academies across the country, but recruits and cohorts, have to go through those academies in quite large numbers. And there's no real safe way to do that in a pandemic with social distancing, etc. So that's certainly one sort of side or aspect of it. The other very much is that, again, when you have a sort of inequity in the way that police resources are distributed, I've said, a couple of times in different interviews that, we all know that police resources are not the same in Khayelitsha as they are in Constantia, or in Alexandria as they are in Sandton. And that really just means that detectives, for example, and other specialist police services aren't quite where they're needed. And that absolutely hampers the ability of the police to deploy them where necessary, as well as making sure that, again, new detectives are trained or more specialist training is undertaken.
And just on the issue of training, because you have spoken about it in the past, we speak a lot in South Africa about the number of boots on the ground, the budget and the rest of it, but the quality ultimately of the training is what determines the strength of the police service in this country, and not just in terms of fighting criminals, but the other more complex issues that would present at police station and community level.
That's correct. So with the basic development and learning program that the SAPS, that really sort of houses and encapsulates the SAPS's training routine or regimen, new recruits are meant to go through essentially about 24 months of training. So that includes about 12 months at an academy, again, multiple academies across the country, then 10 months within a workplace, or in this case, obviously a police station, and then about 2 months of rigorous assessments. So that is theoretically a really sort of solid basis and foundation for training. I think the really difficult thing is when police officers are then in police stations and they're either with station commanders who, either have no real sort of respect for training that's out there and have a very particular way that they practice policing, or the fact that there isn't enough upskilling and reskilling of police officers and their skills, particularly where they're needed. So there's I think a lot to do with training that doesn't just start at recruitment, but goes through the entire life cycle of a police officer's career.
Ziyanda Stuurman, good to speak to you. Ziyanda is a security analyst speaking to us here on News at Prime tonight. Thank you.